Ollie Cole, our newsroom reporter at Times Radio, has joined me in the studio. You got some fresh news about appointments to the House of Lords.
Yes, well, of course, as Keir Starmer is heading out of the job in Downing Street, we've got a list of peerages that have been announced, 21 in total, most of them from the Labour leader, but some from the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives. If I just pick a few out which are of interest, Sir Sadiq Khan becomes a Labour peer, so that's probably the biggest, flashiest one that has been announced. Of course, he can, unlike being a mayor and an MP, you can be a mayor and a peer, so that he can carry on doing that.
Lord Khan of Tooting?
Yes, indeed.
Is that what he is?
I've no idea what he's actually going to be, but that is where he was an MP, like you say. You've also got Kitty Usher, who used to work in the Treasury, was a Labour MP under Gordon Brown, is also the niece of Peter Bottomley and Virginia Bottomley, so a big sort of political family there. A few others who have been nominated by, let's look at the Conservatives, are General Sir Patrick Sanders, who our listeners will know as a former Chief of the General Staff, and you've got some crossbench peerages as well. One of them, Sir Chris Wormold, the Cabinet Secretary, of course, who Starmer brought in and then got very frustrated with and therefore got rid of. So a whole new list of people heading into the House of Lords, as, of course, you know, one of the big moments in the Labour movement and walk towards the general election was actually reforming the House of Lords wholesale. They've now thrown a bunch more peers in there.
Right, it's going to be a queue at the Ermine Hire shop.
Yes.
And Ollie, you've got a really nice exclusive story, haven't you, about the plan for a new number 10 of the North?
Yeah, so this is access talks have been going on between Team Burnham as he gets ready to become Prime Minister on Monday, and the Cabinet Office and wider Whitehall. And we know that one of those big plans that he laid out in that sort of only big speech that he's given properly on any sort of form of policy before the campaign to become Prime Minister, number 10 North was this big project that he wanted. He wanted to see a part of Downing Street run out of Manchester, somewhere that he's obviously presided over as mayor for some time. Now, a document has been sent to the Cabinet Secretary, Antonio Romeo, laying out what the costs of that would be, and it's going to run into the tens of millions, according to the Whitehall officials who've put that together. And a lot of that is security costs, because as it was put to me by an official who sort of put the work in to send it to the Cabinet Secretary, essentially, if you think about mostly the security of the Prime Minister, there are obviously visits abroad and visits here and there, but for the most part, where they're living and where they're in and out of all day is one street. It is Downing Street in London, and that's what you've got to secure. So the fact that you've now got to sort of move a whole part of the number 10 operation is also the idea that Andy Burnham wants to work out of Manchester once a week, therefore perhaps live in his family home in Wigan once or twice a week, and we're not sure also whether his wife is going to join him in Downing Street full-time either. So a pretty big security cost. Now, officials in Whitehall are saying, look, if the Prime Minister wants to push forward a devolution agenda, does tens of millions of pounds mean, you know, is there any price you can put on that is too high a price for, you know, spreading power across the country? And that's the point that Andy Burnham's team will make. But it just goes to show that even the small sort of, you know, flashy, quite quick and easy ideas that Andy Burnham has already laid out already are coming with a pretty big price tag.
Right, and there's still the question of what exactly is number 10 of the North going to do. We had a guest on the breakfast programme on Times Radio, Simon Kay. He's the research director at Restate, and he had this to say about the incoming PM.
I think a degree of optimism, and optimism can be challenging in these moments. I'm not just talking about the football when I say that, but at the moment I feel like we're being shown the bill for a set of plans before we have any idea what those real plans actually are, what the operating model will really be. And it's going to be incumbent on the incoming Burnham administration to quickly demonstrate to us why they think this is going to be worth doing, why it can be got up and running in a speedy way, and why it's going to make a difference to the way that Whitehall functions. Because in the end, if it doesn't shift Whitehall proper, if it's just escaping Whitehall rather than helping to transform it, it's not going to be worth doing.
So that question about this number 10 of the North and the strategy behind it, which was announced by Andy Burnham in a speech a couple of weeks ago, what it actually is, that's still sort of in the future. Meanwhile, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, is the red hot tip to be Burnham's Chancellor of the Exchequer, which sort of shatters the dream of left-wingers who've been lobbying so hard for Ed Miliband to get that job. What do you think lays behind it? What's really going on?
Well, it's interesting because Ed Miliband has basically become a lightning rod in sort of electoral politics across across the country. You know, he did lead the Labour Party and he led it to a general election loss. He has been this quite high-profile figure within government, but attached to a lot of the net zero agenda. He's seen as someone who is pretty ruthless and can grip a department and get it working in the way he wants. Now, the question there is, does Andy Burnham want somebody in number 11 who is going to be a bit of a disruptor, who is going to have a different view for the economic plans than necessarily Andy Burnham might do? You know, we saw the great tensions between Blair and Brown when they came into number 10 and number 11. And so there is that thought among sort of Burnham allies that actually what you want is someone who can grip and deliver something the Prime Minister wants rather than run a little bit more loose within the department. So that's where they're backing and getting behind Shabana Mahmood. Team Burnham, it has to be said, say no final decisions have yet been made, but we're seeing these final days, John, before the Burnham coronation, that sort of momentum swinging back and forth over various ministers as pretty much everyone lines up to lobby to either get a better job, keep their job, or get someone else's job.
Okay, now, meanwhile, on the Reform UK front, the party, Nigel Farage's party, have issued a strenuous denial, and you'll see why it was strenuous and why it's a denial. When I say there's a report, it's in the Guardian, that Nigel Farage told supporters he needed $1 million a year to cover lost earnings if he stood for Parliament, which of course he did. Yeah,
so this comes from Anna Isaac, very well-connected journalist, particularly in the city, and she's been told by three sources that back in March 2024, which politically feels like a lifetime ago now, that Nigel Farage told senior Reform insiders that if he were to resume leadership of the party, run to be an MP, that people were saying he would have to not only win in 2024 for a general election or run for it, he would also have to run for a 2029 one. He'd just sort of started making some decent money again after, of course, being an MEP before and sort of doing a fair amount of political work for not too much. And so he said, essentially, if he were to resume the leadership, he would need to be compensated for the financial harm of giving up his city career to stand for election, spend loads of years campaigning again. Now, we know, of course, that a couple of months later, that donation came from Christopher Harborne, which we talked about a fair amount in recent weeks. And that timeline is the thing that sort of raises a few questions. Now, Christopher Harborne, still says that he gave that as Nigel Farage as sort of totally unconditional money, and that, he didn't know that Farage was going to return to frontline politics. But it does just throw up more questions again. There is a pretty firm denial, like you say, from Reform UK. They say they deny this story. But interestingly, when as Anna Isaacs went to Nigel Farage's office about this, the response was not a denial. The response instead was simply saying that Mr. Farage says he does not feel any answer he gives to you will be reflected accurately. So it just throws up these questions again, and every time it throws up these questions, there is a further question about the establishment, the finances of Reform UK, and what really happened in that period before Nigel Farage became an MP.
Yeah, as we say, the Reform UK denial is very, very strenuous. Thank you so much, Ollie. Ollie Cole there, our newsroom reporter at Times.